I was fired after 22 years. On my last day, my skirt ripped in an elevator full of people. 6 laughed. 1 didn't. That one stranger changed everything. The box wasn't big enough. 22 years at Meridian Financial Group, and everything I owned fit into a single cardboard box from the supply closet. A coffee mug Sophie had given me for Mother's Day when she was 12. A framed photo of her at graduation high school, not college, because I couldn't afford the frame upgrade. A desk calendar still showing last month, because I'd stopped flipping the pages after they told me. I stood at my former desk on the 18th floor, and tried to remember what it felt like to belong here. It had been a week since the meeting. HR and the CEO, both apologetic in that corporate way that meant they'd practiced the script. Diana, we're restructuring. Downsizing, it's nothing personal. We're so grateful for your 22 years of service, but we need to adjust to market realities. Amber Chase will be assuming your responsibilities. Amber Chase, 28 years old, perky, ambitious, willing to work for $30,000 less than I made. Willing to laugh at the CEO's jokes even when they weren't funny. Willing to be what I apparently wasn't anymore, young enough to be worth keeping. They called it restructuring. I called it what it was, ageism with a corporate euphemism. But I'd smiled, nodded, signed the severance papers, 6 weeks' pay, barely enough to cover 2 months of rent and groceries. Agreed to work out my notice like the professional I'd been for 2 decades. And now it was 4:30 p.m. on my last day, and I was packing a box. Need help with that. I looked up. Amber was standing at what used to be my desk, the one she'd taken over 3 days ago, before I'd even finished my notice. She was wearing a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her hair was highlighted to perfection. Her nails were manicured in that trendy almond shape. She looked like success. I looked like I was 50 and tired. Actually, I was 48, but I felt 50, maybe 60. Age had a way of catching up with you when your ex-husband left you for a 26-year-old yoga instructor and your employer decided you were too expensive to keep. I'm fine, I said, closing the box flaps. It's just so sad, Amber said, examining her nails. 22 years, that's like ... forever. I can't imagine working anywhere that long. Because you won't, I thought. Because your generation moves every 2 years, chasing better titles and better salaries. Never building loyalty because companies like this one taught you loyalty doesn't matter. But I didn't say that. I just picked up my box. Good luck, Amber. I hope it works out for you. She smiled the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. Thanks, Diana. I'm sure you'll land somewhere great. I mean, executive assistants are always in demand, right? Executive secretary. I'd been an executive secretary to the CEO, but sure, call it assistant. Diminish it. Make 22 years of managing schedules and budgets and crises sound like fetching coffee. I walked past her without responding. The thing about being fired at 48 is that everyone knows. In the week since the announcement, colleagues I'd worked with for years had either avoided me like failure was contagious or offered those sad, pitying smiles that made me want to scream. I'm so sorry, Diana. If there's anything I can do, ... you'll find something even better. Empty words, meaningless platitudes. Nobody was going to hire a 40-year-old executive secretary when they could get a 20-year-old for less money and more contemporary skills. Code for knows TikTok and doesn't. Complain about ageism. I took the elevator down from 18 to the lobby, box balanced against my hip. My reflection in the polished doors looked back at me. Tired eyes, hair that needed a cut I couldn't afford, a black pencil skirt and white blouse I'd worn for 3 years because my clothing budget had died around the same time my marriage did. The elevator was empty. Small blessing. I watched the numbers descend. 18, 17, 16. At 15, the doors opened. Greg Bolton stepped in. Junior executive 36, the kind of guy who thought business was war and women were collateral damage. He'd hit on me once, 5 years ago, at the holiday party. When I'd politely declined, he'd called me an uptight bitch to his buddies. I'd heard about it through the office gossip chain. He saw me and smirked. Fletcher, last day, I confirmed. Rough break. But hey, that's the game, right? Younger, cheaper talent. Nothing personal. Everything about being fired at 48 was personal. But I didn't argue. 14, 13, 12. At 11, Amber stepped in. Of course she did. She was carrying shopping bags, Nordstrom sacks, lunch break purchases, probably, or maybe celebrating her promotion by spending money she was making because I wasn't anymore. She saw me, and her eyes lit up. Diana, oh my God, I didn't realize you were still here. I thought you'd left already. Leaving now. Well, good luck. Seriously. I hope you find something. The elevator continued down. 10, 9, 8. At 7. 4 more people got on. Strangers, business attire, tired faces. The elevator was getting crowded. I shifted my box, trying to take up less space. We descended in silence. 6, 5, 4, and then I felt it. A tug, my skirt. I looked down just as the elevator doors started to close and realized with horror that the hem of my pencil skirt, the one I'd worn 100 times, the one with the weak seam I'd been meaning to fix, had caught in the door mechanism. The doors closed, the skirt pulled, and then it ripped. Not a small tear. Not something I could cover or ignore. The entire left side of my skirt tore open from hem to hip, with a sound like fabric screaming. The doors sealed shut. My skirt stayed behind, and suddenly I was standing in an elevator full of people with my left leg completely exposed. Underwear, thigh, hip, everything. I froze. The box slipped from my hands and hit the floor. For one perfect, terrible second, nobody said anything, and then Amber laughed. Not a polite chuckle. Not a nervous giggle. A full, loud, cruel laugh that echoed in the small space. Oh my God, she shrieked, pointing at me. Diana, your skirt. Everyone can literally see everything. This is, oh my God, this is. She pulled out her phone, and I realized with fresh horror she was going to take a picture. Wow, just wow. I mean, getting fired wasn't humiliating enough for one day, huh? Greg joined in, his laughter harsh. Damn, Fletcher. Rough day. Fired in the morning, exposed by noon. At least you're consistent. You're falling apart in every possible way. The other 4 people in the elevator reacted differently. 2 of them, men in their 30s, laughed nervously, looking away but clearly amused. 1 woman in her 40s stared at the floor, uncomfortable but silent. Another man looked sympathetic but didn't move, didn't say anything, didn't help. I stood there, tears already burning in my eyes, trying to cover myself with my hands. The box at my feet, my entire left side exposed. 6 people laughing or looking away or doing nothing. I wanted to disappear. Wanted the elevator to open and swallow me. Wanted to be anywhere but here, in this moment, at the absolute lowest point of my life. And then someone moved. A man stepped forward from the back corner of the elevator. Hadn't even noticed him before. He was maybe early 50s, salt and pepper hair, wearing dark jeans and a navy blazer over a white t-shirt, casual. Not the usual soutante crowd. He'd been standing quietly, and I'd barely registered his presence. But now he was moving toward me with purpose. He pulled off his blazer without hesitation and held it out to me. Here, he said quietly. His voice was calm, kind. Take this. I stared at him, frozen, tears streaming down my face. He didn't wait for me to respond. He gently placed the blazer in my hands, then turned to face the elevator. Show's over, he said firmly. Not loud, not aggressive, but with enough authority that Amber lowered her phone. Give her some space. Amber opened her mouth, probably to defend herself, to make an excuse, but he cut her off with a look. You were just being cruel, he said coldly. And now you're done. He pressed the button for the 19th floor, the next stop, and turned back to me. Come on, he said gently. Let's get you out of here. The elevator dinged, the doors opened. He waited, giving me space to move first. I wrapped his blazer around my waist with shaking hands, picked up my box, and stepped out onto the 19th floor. He followed. The doors closed behind us, leaving Amber and Greg and the 4 silent strangers behind. The 19th floor was quiet, empty. Just a hallway with offices and a stairwell at the end. I stood there, clutching the blazer around my waist, tears still falling, trying to remember how to breathe. The man stood a few feet away, giving me space, but staying close enough that I knew he wasn't leaving. "You okay?" he asked softly. I shook my head. Couldn't speak. If I spoke, I'd sob. "Do you need me to call someone? A friend? Family?" I shook my head again. He waited, patient, not rushed, not uncomfortable with my tears or my silence. Finally, I managed to whisper, "I'm so sorry. This is mortifying. Worst day of my entire life. I just thank you. Thank you so much." "You have nothing to apologize for," he said firmly. "Those people should be ashamed. You're not. I don't even know your name." "Alex," he smiled, slightly warm, genuine. "And you, Diana. Diana Fletcher. Nice to meet you, Diana." He gestured toward the stairwell. "Do you need help getting to your car? Or can I call you a ride? I can manage. I just need a minute. Take all the time you need." He glanced at the blazer. "Keep that, by the way. You need it more than I do right now." "I can't, it's expensive. I'll get it cleaned." "And Diana." He said my name gently but firmly. "Keep it. There's a card in the pocket if you ever want to return it. But there's no pressure. Consider it a gift from a stranger who thinks you deserve better than what happened in that elevator." I looked at him really. Looked at him. Kind eyes. No judgment. No pity. Just decency. "Thank you," I whispered. He helped me to the parking garage. Made sure I had my keys. Waited while I got into my car, a 12-year-old Honda Civic with a dent in the bumper and a check engine light that had been on for 3 months. "Drive safe," he said. Then he walked away, hands in his pockets, like he'd done nothing extraordinary. I sat in my car for 10 minutes before I could stop crying long enough to drive. The commute home took 45 minutes. I cried the entire way. By the time I pulled into the parking lot of my apartment complex in Lincoln Park, a 2-bedroom, I could barely afford it, $2,100 a month. I was exhausted, hollowed out, empty. Sophie was there when I walked in. My daughter, 22, senior year at Northwestern, home for the weekend. She took one look at me and dropped her textbook. "Mom, what happened?" I told her everything. The box, the elevator, the rip, Amber's laughter, Greg's cruelty, the strangers who did nothing, and the man who did. "Mom," Sophie said, hugging me tight, "that man, he sounds amazing. Do you know who he was?" "Just someone named Alex." I hung the blazer carefully in my closet, not ready to let it go yet. It smelled faintly of expensive cologne and kindness. Just someone kind. Sophie looked at the blazer. "Did he give you his contact info?" "He said there's a card in the pocket. But I'm not looking. I can't. Not today." "Okay," Sophie said softly. "Not today." I fell asleep that night, still wearing my torn skirt and my white blouse, too tired to change, too devastated to care. The blazer hung in my closet like a lifeline. A reminder that on the worst day of my life, one person had seen me. And that had to be enough. 6 weeks after the elevator, I had applied to 67 jobs. 67 executive assistant positions, office manager roles, administrative coordinator openings. I'd even applied for receptionist jobs, swallowing my pride and telling myself that work was work, that 22 years of experience had to count for something. I'd gotten 3 interviews, 0 offers. The rejections came in different forms. Sometimes it was an email. "We've decided to move forward with other candidates whose skills more closely align with our current needs." Translation: younger candidates who know TikTok and don't cost as much. Sometimes it was a phone call. "Diana, we were really impressed with your experience, but we're looking for someone with more contemporary technical skills." Translation: you're too old and we don't want to train you on new software. And sometimes the worst times it was just silence. Applications disappearing into the void. No response, no acknowledgement. Just the crushing reality that at 48, after 2 decades of loyal service to one company, I'd become invisible. I sat at my kitchen table, a small IKEA thing that wobbled if you put your elbows on it wrong, and stared at my laptop screen. Job listing number 68, administrative assistant, legal firm downtown, $42,000 a year. 12 years ago, I'd been making $68,000, plus benefits, plus respect. Now, I was applying for jobs that paid less than Sophie's college tuition. My phone buzzed. Text from my landlord. Ms. Fletcher, rent is now 2 months past due. Total owed, $4,200. I've been patient, but I need payment by this Friday or I'll have to proceed with eviction filing. I'm sorry, but I have bills too. I set the phone down carefully, like it might explode. 2 months behind. $4,200. I'd been juggling, delaying, promising I'd catch up once I found work, but once I found work kept getting pushed further into the future. I opened my banking app, checked my balance for the 3rd time that day, hoping somehow the numbers had changed. They hadn't. Checking account, $3,847.19. Savings account, $0. I'd drained savings 3 weeks ago to make a partial tuition payment for Sophie. Northwestern was $62,000 a year. Sophie had a partial scholarship, merit-based. Thank God that covered about $34,000. But that left $28,000 a year that I was responsible for. And I'd just made a payment of $7,000 to keep Sophie enrolled for spring semester. But there was another $7,000 due in 4 weeks, or she'd be dropped from her classes. Her last semester, she was graduating in May. I had $3,847. The math didn't work. It hadn't worked for months. I'd been running on fumes and credit cards and the severance package from Meridian that had evaporated faster than I'd expected. Robert, my ex-husband, wasn't helping. He'd remarried 2 years ago. Jennifer, 32, personal trainer, the woman he'd left me for when I was 42 and apparently too old to be interesting anymore. They had a house in the suburbs. They took vacations to Cabo. They posted photos on Facebook of their perfect life. And when I'd asked him to help with Sophie's tuition, just split it, just contribute something, he'd said, she's an adult now. She should take out loans like everyone else. I've moved on. Diana, you need to move on too. Moved on. Like our daughter's education was something I should just move on from. So it was all on me. Rent, tuition, groceries, everything. And I had $3,847. My phone rang. Sophie. I almost didn't answer. Didn't want her to hear the panic in my voice. But I couldn't ignore her. Hey, honey, Mom, how are you? Any luck with the job search? I forced brightness into my voice. A few leads. Nothing solid yet. How's school? Good, busy. Finals coming up in a few weeks. She paused. Mom, are you okay? You sound tired. Just a long day. I'm fine. Mom, her voice got serious. Tell me the truth. Are you okay financially? Because I can take a semester off, get a job, help. Absolutely not, I said firmly. You're graduating in May. 4 months. You're not stopping now. But if you need help, I'll figure it out. I always do. She was quiet for a moment. I love you, Mom. You know that, right? I know. I love you too. We hung up. I put my head in my hands and tried not to cry. I was so tired of crying. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, doing math in my head. Rent, tuition, groceries, gas, utilities, phone bill, health insurance that I'd had to buy on the open market because losing my job meant losing benefits, $450 a month for a plan with a $6,000 deductible that covered almost nothing. Everything added up to more than I had, more than I could make even if I found a job tomorrow. I needed something, anything, a sign that things would get better. At 2 a.m., I gave up on sleep and got up. I made tea, chamomile, because Sophie had bought it for me and said it would help with stress. It didn't help, but the ritual of making it gave me something to do with my hands, some illusion of control. I walked to my closet and looked at the blazer. I'd kept it, washed it carefully, had it dry cleaned at one of those discount places, hung it in my closet like it was precious, because it was. It was the only good thing from that terrible day. I'd been meaning to return it, but I didn't know how. Didn't know how to find the man who'd helped me. He'd said there was a card in the pocket, but I'd been too devastated that first day to look. And then days had passed, and I'd felt too embarrassed, too ashamed. What would I say? Thank you for witnessing my complete humiliation. But now, at 2 a.m., broke and desperate and sleepless, I reached into the pocket. The card was still there, business card. Heavy stock. Elegant printing. Alexander Thornton, founder and CEO Thornton Ventures, phone, email, address. I stared at the name, Alexander Thornton. Alex. I walked back to my kitchen, opened my laptop, and typed the name into Google. The results loaded, and my breath caught. Alexander Thornton, billionaire venture capitalist. Net worth $3.4 billion. I clicked the first article, Forbes. Alexander Thornton, 52, founder of Thornton Ventures, has built one of the most successful venture capital firms in the country. Early investor in Uber, Airbnb, and Stripe, Thornton's portfolio is estimated at $3.4 billion. Despite his wealth, Thornton maintains a notably low profile, rarely appearing at public events, and preferring to work behind the scenes. Double quotes. There were photos. Alex in a tuxedo at some charity gala. Alex shaking hands with tech CEOs. Alex standing in front of a building downtown, a building I recognized, because I'd worked 3 blocks away for 22 years. The man who'd given me his blazer in an elevator was a billionaire. I clicked another link. Chicago Tribune. Widower Alex Thornton continues late wife's charity work. Catherine Thornton, who died of leukemia 8 years ago, was passionate about children's hospitals and education. Her husband continues to honor her memory through the Thornton Foundation. A widower. His wife had died. He'd loved her enough to keep her charity work going. I clicked through more articles. More photos. More details about this man I'd met for 5 minutes in the worst moment of my life. He was a billionaire, and he'd taken off his jacket for me. I sat back in my chair, stunned. He could have walked past me, could have ignored the whole thing. He had billions of dollars, important meetings, places to be, but he'd stopped. He'd helped, and he'd given me his card. There's a card in the pocket if you ever want to return it. But there's no pressure. No pressure. But I'd been carrying his blazer for 6 weeks. A blazer that probably cost more than my monthly rent. And now that I knew who he was, keeping it felt wrong. Felt like taking advantage of kindness. I had to return it. But more than that, and I felt guilty even thinking this, maybe he could help. Not with money. I wasn't going to ask for money. That would be humiliating, like begging. But maybe, maybe he knew someone hiring. Maybe he had connections. Maybe returning his jacket could turn into a conversation, that could turn into a lead, that could turn into a job. I hated myself for thinking it. Hated that I was desperate enough to consider using kindness as networking opportunity. But I was desperate. I looked at the business card again. The address, Merchandise Mart, 40th floor. I could go there. Return the blazer. Thank him properly. And if the conversation turned to work, well, that was just networking, right? That was what people did. My phone buzzed. Text from Sophie. Can't sleep. Thinking about you. Are you really okay? I typed back. I'm okay, I promise. Go to sleep. 3 dots appeared. Then, I love you, Mom. You're the strongest person I know. I wasn't strong. I was broke and terrified and barely holding on, but I couldn't tell her that. Love you too. Sleep well. I set the phone down and looked at the business card again. Tomorrow, I'd go tomorrow. I'd return the blazer. I'd thank him. And maybe, just maybe, I'd find a way out of this nightmare. The next morning, I got up at 6 a.m. and tried to make myself presentable. The problem was, I didn't have presentable anymore. My professional wardrobe consisted of clothes I'd bought years ago when I had a job and a paycheck. Pencil skirts, the ones that still had intact seams. Blouses that were slightly faded from too many washes. One blazer that Sophie had outgrown and given to me because I couldn't afford a new one. I settled on black pants, a white blouse, and Sophie's old blazer. Navy blue, slightly too big in the shoulders, but professional enough. I did my makeup carefully, covered the dark circles, made myself look like someone who had their life together, even though I very much did not. I took the L downtown. Couldn't afford parking. The Merchandise Mart garage was $28 for the day, and I needed that $28 for groceries. The train was $2.50. The Merchandise Mart was a massive Art Deco building on the river, home to design showrooms and tech companies and, apparently, billionaire venture capitalists. I stood outside for 10 minutes, clutching the blazer in a shopping bag, trying to work up the courage to go inside. Just return it. Say thank you, leave. But what if he wasn't there? What if I had to leave it with a receptionist? What if this was a waste of time? What if I never got another chance to talk to someone who might be able to help? I took a breath and walked inside. The lobby was intimidating. All marble and glass and people in expensive suits moving with purpose. I felt immediately out of place. Old, tired, broke. I found the directory. Thornton Ventures. 38th 40th floors. I took the elevator. Different elevator. A fancy one with mirrored walls that showed me exactly how out of place I looked. The doors opened on the 38th floor to a reception area that looked like something from a magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Modern furniture. A receptionist who looked like she'd stepped out of Vogue. "Good morning," she said with a professional smile. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, my name is Diana Fletcher. I'm here to return something to Mr. Thornton." Her smile didn't waver, but her eyes assessed me quickly. I could see her making calculations. No appointment. Carrying a shopping bag, wearing a blazer that was slightly too big. I'll need to check if Mr. Thornton is available. One moment. She picked up the phone, spoke quietly. I caught fragments. ... Woman here, to return something. ... No appointment. Diana Fletcher ... She hung up and looked at me. Someone will be down shortly. I waited. 5 minutes that felt like 50. The elevator doors opened. A woman stepped out early, 50s Asian, perfectly styled in a charcoal suit, carrying an iPad. She walked toward me with the kind of confidence that came from knowing exactly who she was and what she was worth. "Ms. Fletcher." She extended her hand. "I'm Margaret Lee. I'm the HR director here at Thornton Ventures. Alex mentioned you." My heart skipped. "He did. He hoped you'd reach out. Come with me, please." She led me to the elevator. We rode in silence to the 40th floor. The doors opened to an entirely different world. Quieter. More executive. Glass-walled offices with views of the Chicago River. Art on the walls. The smell of expensive coffee. Margaret Sheed told me to call her Maggie, and the elevator led me down a hallway to a corner office. She knocked once and opened the door. "Alex, Ms. Fletcher is here." And there he was. Alex Thornton, billionaire, venture capitalist. The man who'd given me his jacket. He stood up from behind his desk, a beautiful wooden thing that probably costs more than my car, and smiled. "Diana," he said warmly. "I hoped you'd come." He was wearing dark jeans again, a gray sweater, casual, not what I'd expected from a billionaire CEO, but somehow exactly right for the man who'd helped me in an elevator. "Mr. Thornton," I started, but he waved a hand. "Alex. Please." Mr. Thornton was my father. I walked forward, set the shopping bag on his desk. "I wanted to return this. And thank you. Properly. What you did that day," my voice caught. "You saved me from the worst moment of my life. I'll never forget it." He took the blazer from the bag, looked at it, then set it aside like it didn't matter at all. "You saved yourself, Diana. You walked out of that elevator with dignity. I just gave you a jacket. You gave me more than that." He gestured to the chairs facing his desk. "Please, sit. Can I get you coffee, water?" "I'm fine. I don't want to take up your time." "You're not." He sat across from me, not behind his desk, making it feel less formal, more like a conversation. "I'm glad you came. How are you doing?" The question was simple, but the way he asked it, genuine, caring, made my throat tight. I single quotes managing. He waited, patient like he knew there was more. Actually, I said slowly, I'm struggling. I've been looking for work for 6 weeks. I've applied to 67 jobs. I've had 3 interviews. No offers. The market is tough right now, he said carefully. The market is ageist, I corrected. They don't say it directly, but they're looking for younger candidates. People with contemporary skills. People who cost less. He nodded. I'm sorry. That's frustrating. And unfair. I worked 22 years for the same company. I thought loyalty mattered. Turns out it doesn't. It should, he said quietly. But companies forget. They look at spreadsheets instead of people. They see age as liability instead of asset. We fell into conversation naturally. He asked about my experience, what I'd done at Meridian, what I was good at, what challenges I'd faced. I found myself being honest in a way I hadn't been in interviews. Maybe because he wasn't interviewing me. Maybe because he'd already seen me at my worst, and there was nothing left to hide. You were an executive secretary, he said thoughtfully. To the CEO, for 22 years. Yes, that's rare. That kind of stability. That kind of trust. He leaned back slightly. What did that job actually entail? Day to day. I thought about it. Everything. Managing his schedule, obviously. But also ... crisis management. If something went wrong, a client emergency, an internal conflict, a regulatory issue, I was the first line of defense. I coordinated between departments. I managed budgets for office operations. I kept track of deadlines and deliverables across the entire company. So you were doing operations work, I suppose. But they called me secretary. So ... I shrugged. Tell me about the hardest problem you solved. I paused, surprised by the question. Then, 3 years ago, Meridian was merging with a smaller financial services firm. It was chaos. 2 different systems, conflicting processes, people fighting over territory. The CEO was drowning in details. He's good at vision, terrible at execution. So I stepped in. I mapped everything. Every process, every pain point, every redundancy. I created a transition plan. I got buy-in from the department heads by showing them how it would make their jobs easier, not harder. We completed the integration 3 weeks ahead of schedule and $200,000 under budget. Alex was quiet for a moment, studying me. Did they promote you for that? No, they thanked me. But it wasn't my job to do strategic work. It was my job to support the CEO, Diana. He leaned forward. You weren't doing secretarial work. You were doing operations management. Strategic operations. You just had the wrong title. I'd never thought of it that way. 22 years of being called secretary, of being introduced as the CEO's right hand but never given credit for the actual work. I'd internalized it. Started to believe that's all I was. Maybe, I said quietly. Alex stood up and walked to the window. Looked out at the Chicago skyline. When he turned back, his expression was serious. Diana, I have a proposition for you. And I want you to hear me out before you say no. My heart started beating faster. Okay. Thornton Ventures needs someone in operations. Someone who can see the whole picture. Anticipate problems. Coordinate across teams. Someone detail-oriented and trustworthy. He paused. I'd like to offer you a position as Director of Operations. The salary is $120,000 a year, plus equity that vests over 4 years. And if you prove yourself, which I think you will, there's a clear path to VP of Operations within a year. Maybe coup down the line. I stared at him. $120,000. I was currently making $0 and about to be evicted. You don't know me, I whispered. We met for 5 minutes. I know enough. You kept a $2,000 blazer for 6 weeks when you're broke and came to return it. That tells me about integrity. You worked 22 years at one company. That tells me about loyalty. You held your composure when people were cruel. That tells me about character. He paused. And the way you described that merger integration tells me you can do this job. Why? My voice broke. Why would you do this for me? He was quiet for a moment. When I was starting out 25 years ago, I had nothing. No money, no connections, just an idea and a lot of nerve. I pitched 63 investors. 62 said no. The 63rd was a woman named Ruth Castellanos. She gave me $50,000 and 6 months of mentorship. Changed my life completely. He met my eyes. She died 10 years ago. I never got to pay her back. But I can pay it forward. That's what I'm doing. This feels like charity. Then prove it's not. 90-day trial. You prove yourself. If you're not good at the job, we part ways professionally. If you are, you stay. And Maggie will properly vet you, background check, references, the works. This is a business decision, Diana. I just happen to believe in you. I looked at him, at this stranger who'd helped me once, and was now offering to change my life. What if I fail? Then you fail. But I don't think you will. He smiled slightly. Do you know what I saw in that elevator? Everyone else saw a woman at her lowest. I saw someone who kept her dignity when she had every reason to lose it. That's not something you can teach. That's character. And character matters more than credentials. I felt tears coming and fought them back. 90 days deal. He extended his hand. I shook it. Maggie appeared in the doorway like she'd been waiting, ready to do paperwork. Actually, Alex said, let's do this properly. Maggie, can you run the background check and references first? Diana, I'll need your resume and 3 professional references. If everything checks out, Tand, I think it will. Maggie will send you a formal offer letter by end of week. You can start the following Monday. Does that work? It meant waiting. Days of uncertainty. But it also meant this was real. Professional, not charity. Yes, I said. That works. 3 days later, I was sitting at my kitchen table at 7 a.m. when the email came. From Margaret Lee, Thornton Ventures. Subject, offer letter, Director of Operations Ms. Fletcher, your background check and references have cleared. Please find attached your formal offer letter. If the terms are acceptable, please sign and return by end of business Friday. We'd like you to start Monday, March 4th. Welcome to Thornton Ventures. Margaret Lee, HR Director. I opened the attachment with shaking hands. Offer of employment. Position, Director of Operations. Salary, $120,000 annually. Equity, 0. 15% vesting over 4 years. Benefits, health insurance, 401k match, 4 weeks PTO. Start date, Monday, March 4th, 2024. Trial period, 90 days. I sat at my kitchen table and cried into my coffee. When I could breathe again, I called Sophie. Mom. She sounded worried. Is everything okay? Sophie. I was crying now. Couldn't stop. I got a job. A real job. Mom. That's amazing. Tell me everything. I told her. Everything. The blazer. The card. Googling Alex at 2 a.m. Going to his office. The conversation. The offer. $120,000. Sophie breathed. Mom, that's incredible. I have to prove myself. 90 days. If I'm not good enough, you'll be amazing. Mom, you're the most capable person I know. They're lucky to have you. When I hung up, I sat in my car. I'd driven to a Starbucks parking lot because I needed to be out of my apartment, needed to be somewhere that felt normal and let myself feel it. Hope. But underneath the hope was something else. Fear. Fear that I'd fail. That 90 days from now, Alex would realize he'd made a mistake. That Maggie would discover I wasn't qualified. That the other executives would see through me and know I didn't belong. Fear that this was too good to be true. That somehow it would be taken away. I'd been disappointed too many times. By Robert. By Meridian. By 67 job applications that went nowhere. What if this was just one more disappointment waiting to happen? But then I thought about Sophie. About the rent notice. About the $3,847 in my checking account that wouldn't last another month. I didn't have the luxury of fear. I had to make this work. I had to be good enough. I signed the offer letter, scanned it, and sent it back. Then I drove home. For the first time in 6 weeks, I didn't cry. I stood outside the merchandise mart for 10 minutes before I could make myself walk through the doors. The building was massive. Art Deco, architecture, all glass and limestone, sitting right on the Chicago River like it owned the place. Which, I guess, parts of it did owned by people like Alex Thornton. People with billions of dollars in buildings with their names on them. People who didn't belong in the same world as someone like me. I clutched the shopping bag tighter. Inside was Alex's blazer washed, dry cleaned at that discount place on Milwaukee Avenue, folded carefully. I'd spent $18 on the cleaning. Money I didn't have, but I couldn't return a dirty jacket to a billionaire. God, a billionaire. I still couldn't wrap my head around it. The man who'd helped me in that elevator jeans navy blazer.com voice, kind eyes was, worth $3.4 billion. I'd Googled him 15 times in the last 2 days. Read every article. Studied every photo. Early investor in Uber, Airbnb, Stripe. Half of Chicago's tech startups owed their existence to Thornton Ventures. And he'd taken off his jacket for me. A woman in a sharp gray suit pushed past me into the revolving door, giving me a look that said move or get out of the way. I took a breath and followed her inside. The lobby was exactly what I expected. Marble floors, soaring ceilings, people in expensive clothes, walking with purpose, heels clicking, phones pressed to ears, everyone looking like they belonged. I looked down at my outfit. Black pants, the good ones. Not the ones with the worn hem. White blouse I'd ironed 3 times this morning. Sophie's old blazer, navy blue, slightly too big in the shoulders but professional enough. I looked like someone trying very hard to look like she hadn't been fired 6 weeks ago. A directory near the elevators listed the building's tenants. Design firms, tech companies, law offices, and there, on floors 38 to 40, Thornton Ventures. Of course he got 3 floors. I took the elevator up, watched the numbers climb. Tried to remember how to breathe. Just return the jacket. Say thank you, leave. That was the plan. That was all I needed to do. Except Sophie's voice kept playing in my head from last night. Mom, maybe he can help. Maybe he knows someone hiring. You gave him his card for a reason. And my own voice, angry, defensive. I'm not using his kindness as a networking opportunity. That's manipulative. Sophie had given me that look. The one that said, Mom, you're being ridiculous. It's not manipulative. It's being smart. You need help. He offered his card. That's literally what business cards are for. But it felt wrong. It felt like taking advantage. The elevator doors opened on the 38th floor. I stepped out into a reception area that looked like something from a magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river. Modern furniture, leather and steel. The kind that costs more than my monthly rent. Abstract art on the walls that I pretended to understand. A receptionist sat behind a glass desk. She was maybe 25, blonde, wearing a cream-colored dress that probably cost $600. She looked up with a professional smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Good morning, do you have an appointment? No. My voice came out smaller than I wanted. I cleared my throat. I'm Diana Fletcher. I'm here to return something to Mr. Thornton. Her smile didn't change, but her eyes did. I watched her assess me. Take in the borrowed blazer. The shopping bag. The fact that I didn't have an appointment. I'd seen that look before. At job interviews. At networking events. The look that said you don't belong here. I'll need to check if Mr. Thornton is available. She picked up the phone. Spoke quietly. I caught fragments. ... Woman, here to return something. No appointment. ... Diana Fletcher. ... double quotes. She hung up. Looked at me with that same polite smile. Someone will be down shortly. Please have a seat. I sat on one of the leather chairs. It was too soft. I sank into it awkwardly. The shopping bag balanced on my lap. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. I checked my phone. No new emails. No new job alerts. Just a text from Sophie. You got this, Mom. Just be yourself. Easy for her to say. Herself was a 22-year-old college senior with her whole life ahead of her. Myself was a 48-year-old unemployed former secretary whose skirt had ripped in an elevator 6 weeks ago. The elevator dinged. A woman stepped out. Early 50s, Asian, perfectly styled in a charcoal suit. She carried an iPad and moved with the kind of confidence that came from knowing exactly who she was and what she was worth. She walked straight toward me. "Ms. Fletcher." She extended her hand. Her handshake was firm. Professional. "I'm Margaret Lee. I'm the HR director here at Thornton Ventures. Alex mentioned you." My heart did something complicated. He did. He hoped you'd reach out. Her smile was warmer than the receptionist's. Real. "Come with me, please." I followed her to the elevator. We rode in silence to the 40th floor. I tried not to stare at my reflection in the mirrored walls. Tried not to think about how out of place I looked standing next to this woman, who probably made twice what I used to make. Used to, past tense. The doors opened to a different world, quieter, more refined, glass-walled offices with views of the Chicago River. More art this time, paintings I actually recognized. A Rothko, a Pollock. Originals, probably. The kind you saw in museums. The smell of expensive coffee hung in the air. Margaret she'd told me to call her Maggie, and the elevator led me down a hallway. Past offices where people worked at standing desks, fingers flying over keyboards, whiteboards covered in equations and charts I didn't understand. We stopped at a corner office. The door was open. Through it, I could see windows. A desk, beautiful dark wood, clean lines, nothing like the cluttered desks at Meridian. Bookshelves lined one wall. Business books, biographies, a photo in a silver frame I couldn't quite see from the doorway. Maggie knocked once. "Alex, Miss Fletcher is here." And there he was. Alex Thornton stood up from behind his desk. He was wearing dark jeans again. A gray sweater over a white t-shirt. Casual, not what I'd expected from a billionaire CEO, but somehow exactly right for the man who'd given me his jacket. He smiled. Warm. Genuine. "Diana," he said, "I hoped you'd come." My hands were shaking. I walked into the office. Maggie had disappeared, closing the door quietly behind her, and set the shopping bag on the edge of his desk. "Mr. Thornton, I wanted to return this." The words came out in a rush, rehearsed. "And thank you. Properly what you did that day," my voice caught. I'd promised myself I wouldn't cry. "You saved me from the worst moment of my life. I'll never forget it." He took the blazer from the bag, looked at it for a moment, then set it aside like it didn't matter at all. "You saved yourself, Diana." His voice was the same as I remembered, calm, kind. "You walked out of that elevator with dignity. I just gave you a jacket. You gave me more than that." He gestured to the chairs facing his desk, not behind it, across from it, like we were equals having a conversation, not a billionaire granting an audience. "Please, sit. Can I get you coffee? Water?" "I'm fine." I sat. The chair was leather. Comfortable, but not showy. "I don't want to take up your time." "You're not." He sat across from me, leaned back slightly. His eyes were exactly as I remembered, warm, observant, present, like I was the only person in the world right now. "I'm glad you came. How are you doing?" The question was simple, but the way he asked it, genuine, caring, like he actually wanted to know, made my throat tight. "I'm started to say fine," the automatic response. The lie I'd been telling everyone for 6 weeks, but something about the way he was looking at me made it impossible. "I'm struggling." He waited, didn't rush me, didn't offer platitudes. "I've been looking for work," I continued slowly. 6 weeks now. I've applied to 67 jobs. Executive assistant positions, office manager roles, administrative coordinator openings. I laughed, but it came out bitter. I even applied for receptionist jobs. Swallowed my pride and told myself work is work. How many interviews? 30 offers. He nodded, didn't look surprised. "The market is tough right now. The market is ageist." The words came out sharper than I intended. But I was tired of pretending. Tired of the careful euphemisms. They don't say it directly, but they're looking for younger candidates. People with contemporary skills. People who cost less. "I'm sorry." And he sounded like he meant it. "That's frustrating. And unfair. I worked 22 years for the same company." My voice broke. I thought loyalty mattered. I thought experience mattered. Turns out it doesn't. Not when you're 48, and there's a 28-year-old who'll do your job for $30,000 less. It should matter, he said quietly. But companies forget. They look at spreadsheets instead of people. They see age as a liability instead of an asset. He paused. How long were you at Meridian? 22 years. Executive secretary to the CEO. His eyebrows rose. That's rare. That kind of stability. That kind of trust. I shrugged. I was good at my job. I'm sure you were. What did that job actually entail? Day to day, I blinked. No one had asked me that. Not in any of my 3 interviews. They'd looked at my resume, seen executive secretary, and made assumptions. Everything, I said slowly. Managing his schedule, obviously. But also, crisis management. If something went wrong, a client emergency, an internal conflict, a regulatory issue, IA was the first line of defense. I coordinated between departments. I managed budgets for office operations. I kept track of deadlines and deliverables across the entire company. He was watching me carefully. So you were doing operations work, I suppose. It felt strange, hearing it described that way. But they called me secretary. So double quotes. Tell me about the hardest problem you solved. The question caught me off guard. I sat back, thinking 3 years ago, I started. Meridian was merging with a smaller financial services firm. It was chaos. 2 different systems, conflicting processes, people fighting over territory. The CEO was drowning in details. He's good at vision, terrible at execution. I could picture it clearly. The conference rooms full of angry department heads. The spreadsheets that didn't match. The mounting panic. So I stepped in. I mapped everything. Every process, every pain point, every redundancy. I created a transition plan. I got buy-in from the department heads by showing them how it would make their jobs easier, not harder. And we completed the integration 3 weeks ahead of schedule, and $200,000 under budget. Alex was quiet for a moment, studying me. Did they promote you for that? I laughed, bitter again. No, they thanked me, gave me a nice card, but it wasn't my job to do strategic work. It was my job to support the CEO, Diana. He leaned forward. His voice was firm now. Direct. You weren't doing secretarial work. You were doing operations management. Strategic operations. You just had the wrong title. I'd never thought of it that way. 22 years of being called secretary. Of being introduced as the CEO's right hand, but never given credit for the actual work. Of sitting in meetings where men with MBAs presented plans I'd helped create, while I took notes and ordered lunch. I'd internalized it. Started to believe that's all I was. Maybe, I said quietly. Alex stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the Chicago skyline, the river, the buildings. The city stretched out below us. When he turned back, his expression was serious. Diana, I have a proposition for you, and I want you to hear me out before you say no. My heart started beating faster. Okay. Thornton Ventures needs someone in operations. Someone who can see the whole picture, anticipate problems, coordinate across teams. Someone detail-oriented and trustworthy. He paused. I'd like to offer you a position as Director of Operations. The salary is $120,000 a year, plus equity that vests over 4 years. And if you prove yourself, which I think you will, there's a clear path to VP of Operations within a year. Maybe coup down the line. I stared at him. $120,000. I was currently making $0, about to be evicted. Sophie's tuition was due in 4 weeks, and I had $3,800 in my checking account. You don't know me, I whispered. We met for 5 minutes. I know enough. His voice was calm, certain. You kept a $2,000 blazer for 6 weeks when you're broke, and you came to return it. That tells me about integrity. You worked 22 years at one company. That tells me about loyalty. You held your composure when people were cruel. That tells me about character. He paused. And the way you described that merger integration tells me you can do this job. Why? The word came out broken. Why would you do this for me? He was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer. When I was starting out 25 years ago, I had nothing. No money, no connections, just an idea and a lot of nerve. I pitched 63 investors. 62 said no. He smiled slightly. The 63rd was a woman named Ruth Castellanos. She gave me $50,000 and 6 months of mentorship. Changed my life completely. He looked at the photo on his shelf, the one I hadn't been able to see from the doorway. She died 10 years ago. I never got to pay her back. But I can pay it forward. That's what I'm doing. This feels like charity. Then prove it's not. His voice was firm now, direct. 90-day trial. You prove yourself. If you're not good at the job, we part ways professionally. If you are, you stay. And Maggie will properly vet you, background check, references, the works. This is a business decision, Diana. I just happen to believe in you. I looked at him, at this stranger who'd helped me once and was now offering to change my life. What if I fail? Then you fail. But I don't think you will. He smiled slightly. Do you know what I saw in that elevator? Everyone else saw a woman at her lowest. I saw someone who kept her dignity when she had every reason to lose it. That's not something you can teach. That's character. And character matters more than credentials. I felt tears coming. Fought them back. 90 days. Deal. He extended his hand. I shook it. His grip was firm, warm. Maggie appeared in the doorway like she'd been waiting. Ready to do paperwork? Actually, Alex said, let's do this properly. Maggie, can you run the background check and references first? Diana, I'll need your resume and 3 professional references. If everything checks out, and I think it will, Maggie will send you a formal offer letter by end of week. You can start the following Monday. Does that work? It meant waiting. Days of uncertainty. But it also meant this was real. Professional. Not charity. Yes, I said, that works. I walked out of the merchandise mart 45 minutes later, in a daze. Maggie had taken my information. Asked for references. I'd given her 3 former colleagues from Meridian. People I trusted to tell the truth about my work. She'd explained the background check process, the timeline, the next steps. We'll be in touch by Friday, she'd said at the elevator. Then, more quietly, he's serious about this, you know. Alex doesn't make offers lightly, I know. And for what it's worth, she'd smiled. I think you'll be good at this. The way you talked about that merger project. That's exactly the kind of thinking we need. Now I sat in my car in the parking garage, taken the train in. But I needed to walk, needed to move, needed to think. So I'd walked to the garage where I'd parked that terrible day 6 weeks ago. The same garage, different person. My phone rang. Sophie, Mom, how did it go? I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. He offered me a job. Silence. Then, what? Director of Operations. $120,000 a year. I was crying now. Couldn't stop. Plus equity. With a path to VP or coup eventually. Oh my God. Oh my God, Mom. She was crying too. That's incredible. That's when do you start? I don't know yet. He's doing background checks. References. If everything clears, maybe next week it'll clear. Mom, you're the most competent person I know. I have to prove myself, I said. 90 days. If I'm not good enough, you'll be amazing. Her voice was fierce. Certain. Mom, do you understand what just happened? You went to return a jacket. You got a career. I laughed. It came out watery. I know. Do you though? Because this isn't luck. This isn't charity. You earned this. The way you handled that elevator situation, the way you've handled everything these past 6 weeks, that's why he offered you this job. Not because he feels sorry for you. Because he sees what you're capable of. I wanted to believe her. I'm scared, I whispered. Good. That means you care. But Mom, you've got this. I know you do. We hung up a few minutes later. I sat in my car, holding my phone, staring at nothing. $120,000. It would cover rent, Sophie's tuition, groceries, everything. It would save us. But underneath the relief was something else. Fear that I'd fail. That 90 days from now, Alex would realize he'd made a mistake. That Maggie's background check would reveal something I didn't know was wrong. That the other executives would see through me and know I didn't belong. Fear that this was too good to be true. That somehow it would be taken away. I'd been disappointed too many times. By Robert, by Meridian, by 67 job applications that went nowhere. What if this was just one more disappointment waiting to happen? But then I thought about Sophie. About the eviction notice. About the $3,800 in my checking account that wouldn't last another month. I didn't have the luxury of fear. I had to make this work. I had to be good enough. 3 days later, I was sitting at my kitchen table at 7 in the morning when the email came. From Margaret Lee, Thornton Ventures. Subject: Offer letter, Director of Operations, Ms. Fletcher, your background check and references have cleared. Please find attached your formal offer letter. If the terms are acceptable, please sign and return by end of business Friday. We'd like you to start Monday, March 11th. Welcome to Thornton Ventures. Margaret Lee, HR Director. I opened the attachment with shaking hands. Offer of employment position. Director of Operations. Salary: $120,000 annually. Equity: 0. 15% vesting over 4 years. Benefits: health insurance, 401k match, 4 weeks PTO. Start date: Monday, March 11th. Trial period: 90 days. I sat at my kitchen table and cried into my coffee. When I could breathe again, I signed the document, scanned it, sent it back. Then I called Sophie. I start Monday, she screamed, actual screaming. I had to hold the phone away from my ear. Mom, oh my God, we're celebrating this weekend. I'm coming home. We're going out to dinner. Somewhere nice. My treat. Sophie, you don't have to, Mom. Let me do this. Please. So I did. That weekend, Sophie took me to dinner at an Italian place in Wicker Park. Not too expensive. She was still a college student, but nicer than anywhere I'd been in months. We ordered pasta, split a bottle of wine, talked about everything and nothing. Are you nervous? Sophie asked, twirling spaghetti around her fork. Terrified. You'll be great. You keep saying that. Because it's true. She set down her fork. Looked at me seriously. Mom, I need you to hear this. You didn't get this job because Alex feels sorry for you. You got it because you're qualified. Because you're good at what you do. Because for 22 years, you did operations work with a secretary's title, and now someone finally recognized it. But what if you fail? She cut me off. Then you fail, and you get another job. But Mom, I don't think you will, and neither does Alex Thornton. Otherwise, he wouldn't have hired you. I wanted to believe her. Maybe I was starting to. Sunday night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Monday. My first day, Director of Operations, Thornton Ventures. I'd picked out my outfit 3 times. Black pants, new ones, bought at TJ Maxx with money I probably shouldn't have spent. A blue blouse, Sophie's blazer, because it was the nicest one I owned. I'd researched the company. Read articles about Alex. Studied organizational charts. Tried to understand what a director of operations actually did at a venture capital firm. Tried not to panic about the gap between what I knew and what I needed to know. At midnight, I gave up on sleep. Made chamomile tea. Sat at my kitchen table with my laptop. Opened my email. Reread Maggie's message for the 100th time. Welcome to Thornton Ventures. Welcome, like I belonged there. I thought about the elevator. 6 weeks ago. The worst day of my life. Amber's laugh. Greg's cruelty. The strangers who'd looked away. And Alex. Standing in the corner, stepping forward when no one else did. Here, take this 3 words. 1 action, and everything changed. Not because he was a billionaire. Not because he could afford to be generous. Because he chose to help when helping wasn't required. I thought about what Sophie had said. About earning this. About being qualified. Maybe she was right. Maybe Alex saw something in me that I'd forgotten to see in myself. Or maybe probably I'd just gotten lucky. Right place, right time, right person. But luck or not, I had a chance. 90 days to prove I belonged. 90 days to show that the woman who'd kept her dignity in an elevator could keep her competence in a boardroom. 90 days to turn the worst day of my life into the first day of something better. I finished my tea, closed my laptop, went back to bed. This time, I slept. And when I woke up Monday morning at 5:30 too early, too anxious, too wired to stay in bed, I got up, made coffee, got dressed, stood in front of the mirror and looked at myself. Black pants, blue blouse, navy blazer. I looked professional, capable, ready. I looked like someone who belonged at Thornton Ventures. Maybe if I looked like it long enough, I'd start to believe it. I grabbed my bag, my keys, took one last look around my apartment, small, cramped, 2 months behind on rent but still mine. Then I left. The L was crowded. Morning commuters pressed together, everyone half asleep, staring at phones. I stood by the doors, watched the city pass, tried to remember how to breathe. 90 days. You can do this. You have to. The train pulled into Grand Station. I got off, walked the 3 blocks to the merchandise mart. The building looked different in the morning, less intimidating. Just glass and limestone and people going to work. I went inside, took the elevator to the 38th floor. The receptionist from last week looked up, smiled warmer this time. Ms. Fletcher. Welcome, Maggie's expecting you. I nodded, couldn't speak. The elevator to the 40th floor felt longer this time. I watched the numbers climb, tried not to think about the last elevator. The last time everything changed. The doors opened. Maggie was waiting. Diana. Welcome to your first day. I stepped out. And everything began. 90 days. That's how long I had to prove I belonged at Thornton Ventures. Turns out, I only needed 60. The first week was hell. Not because the work was impossible, it wasn't. But because I felt like an imposter every single second. Walking into that office on the 40th floor. Sitting in meetings with people who had MBAs from Harvard and Stanford. Listening to conversations about cap tables and portfolio companies and Series B funding rounds vocabulary. I had to Google in the bathroom, but I learned fast. Maggie became my lifeline. She walked me through systems, introduced me to the team, translated the venture capital jargon into language I could understand. You already know operations, she told me during week 2. You just need to learn our industry. The principles are the same. She was right. By week 3, I was identifying inefficiencies, redundant software subscriptions, vendor contracts that hadn't been renegotiated in years, scheduling conflicts that wasted hours of executive time. By week 6, I'd presented my first report to Alex in the leadership team. $400,000 in annual waste eliminated. New systems that saved everyone time. Alex had smiled proud, warm, and said 4 words that changed everything. This is excellent work. Not good for someone new. Not impressive for your background. Excellent. Period. Month 3, Maggie called me into her office. Your trial period ends Friday, she said. No preamble. Direct. I liked that about her. Alex and I have been reviewing your performance. My heart stopped. And, you're exceptional, Diana. We're making you permanent. Raising your salary to $130,000 plus accelerated equity vesting, I cried. Right there in her office. Couldn't stop. Thank you, I whispered. I won't let you down. You haven't. You've exceeded every expectation. 6 months in, I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving. The team respected me. The operations ran smoother. I'd implemented new project management systems, streamlined communications, cut costs without sacrificing quality, and my life outside work, finally stable. I'd paid off my rent arrears, made Sophie's tuition payment in full 6 months early, moved to a better apartment in Old Town. Nothing fancy, but mine, earned. Not borrowed, not scraped together, earned. Sophie visited one weekend in September, sat at my new kitchen table, solid wood, didn't wobble and, Looked around. Mom, this place is beautiful. It's small, it's yours, and you bought that table yourself, and those curtains, and she gestured around. All of it. You know what that means. What? You won. You actually won. I didn't feel like I'd won. I felt like I'd survived. But maybe that was the same thing. That same month, Meridian Financial contacted Thornton Ventures. They wanted investment, $5 million to expand into new markets. They'd submitted a pitch deck. Requested a meeting. I saw the email come through. Saw the company name. Felt my stomach drop. Maggie saw my face. You okay? That's my old company. The one that fired you. Yes. She was quiet for a moment. Do you want to recuse yourself from the meeting? I thought about it. About Amber. About Greg. About the CEO who'd thanked me for 22 years of service, and then replaced me with someone younger and cheaper. No, I said. I want to be there. The meeting was scheduled for a Thursday in October. I dressed carefully that morning. Navy suit new, tailored, expensive. Heels that made me 3 inches taller. Hair professionally styled. Makeup perfect. I looked successful. Because I was the Meridian team, arrived at 2 p.m. 5 people. CEO Richard Morrison. CFO, Marketing Director. Legal Counsel. And Amber Chase. Executive Assistant. She'd gotten my old job. Moved into my old office. Taken my old title. And from the looks of it, tired eyes, wrinkled blouse, stressed demeanor, she was drowning. They filed into the conference room. I was already seated. Director of Operations nameplate in front of me. Alex on my right. Maggie on my left. 2 other partners across the table. Amber saw me first. Her face went white, then red, then white again. Diana? Her voice was too loud. Shocked? What are you? You work here? I smiled. Professional. Cold. I'm Director of Operations. Please, have a seat. She sat, couldn't stop staring. Greg Bolton was their 2 junior executive, same position as 6 months ago. He saw me. Looked away quickly. Richard Morrison started the presentation. Talked about growth opportunities, market expansion, revenue projections. I took notes, asked questions. Reviewed their financials with the same analytical eye I'd used on the merger 3 years ago. The numbers didn't add up. Revenue was declining. They'd lost 2 major clients. Operating expenses were up 15%. They were asking for $5 million to cover losses, not fund growth. After 30 minutes, Alex thanked them. We'll review and follow up. Translation? No. The Meridian team stood, started gathering their materials. Amber lingered. Tried to catch my eye. Diana, can we talk? Maybe grab coffee. I don't think so. Please, I just tea. Wanted to say I'm sorry about that day. The elevator, I was awful. I looked at her. Really looked, saw the desperation. The exhaustion. The realization that her cruelty had come back to haunt her. Amber, I appreciate the apology. But I don't need it. That day taught me who shows up when it matters. You didn't. Someone else did. That's all I needed to know. She opened her mouth, closed it, nodded. They left. After the door closed, Alex turned to me. Well, pass on the investment. Their financials are a mess. Leadership is weak. They're not a good risk. He smiled. Agreed. You okay? I'm perfect. And I was. That night Alex asked me to dinner. Not a work dinner. A real dinner. We'd been dancing around it for months. Professional boundaries. Appropriate distance. But there was something there. Had been since the beginning. We went to a small Italian place in River North. Sat across from each other. Talked about everything except work. About his late wife, Catherine. About my ex-husband, Robert. About loss and loneliness and learning to live again. I haven't felt this way since Catherine died, Alex said quietly. I didn't think I would again. Didn't think I wanted to. What changed? You did. He met my eyes. You reminded me that good people still exist. That kindness still matters. That sometimes the worst days lead to the best things. I reached across the table. Took his hand. I'm scared, I admitted, of this, of us, of losing it. Me too, but I think it's worth being scared for. We left the restaurant holding hands. He kissed me outside on the sidewalk, soft, gentle, perfect, and I kissed him back. 1 year later, I stood in front of the mirror in my bedroom new apartment, Gold Coast, 2 bedrooms, floor 2 ceiling windows overlooking the lake and adjusted my dress, navy blue, elegant, expensive. Tonight was the Chicago Children's Hospital annual gala, black tie, high society, the kind of event I never thought I'd attend. But Alex had asked me. Not as his COO. I'd been promoted 6 months ago, salary now $160,000 plus equity worth $500,000, but as his partner. We'd been together 8 months, officially, publicly. Sophie approved. He's good for you, Mom. He sees you. She was right. He did. The gala was beautiful. Chandeliers, music. People in tuxedos and gowns, drinking champagne and writing checks for charity. I belonged here now. Not because of Alex. Because I'd earned my place. Halfway through the night, I saw her, Amber. She looked tired, older. She was there representing some small firm. I didn't catch the name. Networking desperately. Trying to make connections. She saw me across the room. Saw me with Alex. Saw the dress, the confidence, the life I'd built. For a moment, I felt sorry for her. Then I let it go. She'd made her choices. I'd made mine. Alex found me on the balcony later, wrapped his arms around me from behind, kissed my temple. You okay? I'm perfect. You keep saying that. Because it's true. He turned me around, looked at me seriously. Diana, I know we said we'd take this slow, but I don't want to waste time. Life's too short. Catherine taught me that. My heart started racing. What are you saying? I'm saying I love you. I'm saying I want a future with you. I'm not asking yet, not tonight, but I'm telling you that I will, soon, and I need to know if you'd say yes. I thought about the elevator. 1 year ago, the worst day of my life. 7 people, 6 laughed, 1 helped. That one person changed everything. Yes, I whispered. I'd say yes. He kissed me, long, deep, perfect. 2 months later, we got married. Small ceremony. 50 people. Chicago Botanic Garden. Sophie as maid of honor. Maggie as bridesmaid. I wore white. Felt beautiful. Felt worthy. Alex's vows made me cry. You taught me I could love again. That second chances are real. That sometimes the worst days lead to the best lives. My vows were simpler. You saw me when I felt invisible. You believed in me when I'd stopped believing in myself. You gave me dignity when I had nothing else. I promised to spend the rest of my life earning that gift. At the reception, Sophie pulled me aside. Mom, are you happy? I'm happy. Really, really. She hugged me tight. You deserve this. All of it. You know that, right? I did. Finally, I did. 6 months after the wedding, I was in my office at Thornton Ventures corner office now, 40th floor, windows overlooking the river when Maggie knocked. Got a minute? Always. She sat down, smiled. I have news. I'm retiring next year, and Alex and I have been talking. We'd like you to take over as Chief Operating Officer. I stared at her. Maggie, you're ready. More than ready. You've earned it. Coup. The position Alex had mentioned a year ago. The one I'd thought was charity. Turns out, it wasn't charity at all. It was recognition. Earned. Deserved. Thank you, I whispered. Don't thank me. You did this. That night, I stood on our balcony, Lox's penthouse, now ours, looking out at the city. Chicago. The city where I'd lost everything. The city where I'd found everything. 1 year ago, I'd stood in an elevator, humiliated, broken, invisible. Today, I was CEO of a $3 billion venture capital firm, married to a man who loved me, respected by people who mattered, financially secure, finally happy. Not because a billionaire rescued me, because I rescued myself. Alex just held the door open. I thought about Amber, about Greg, about the strangers who'd laughed or looked away. They were still stuck in that elevator, going nowhere. While I rose, the worst day of my life became the best thing that ever happened to me. Not because my skirt ripped, because one person showed me kindness when kindness cost him nothing but meant everything to me. Sometimes bad days reveal who we are. Mine revealed I was someone who could survive humiliation with dignity. And sometimes strangers become family, not because they save you, because they see you. And you see yourself, ... If Diana's story moved you, if you've ever been dismissed and came back stronger, if one act of kindness changed your path, if you believe dignity matters more than circumstances, you're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about second chances and people who rise after falling. Like if you believe how someone treats you at your lowest reveals everything. Share with someone rebuilding their life. Comment, has a stranger's kindness ever changed your trajectory? Your story matters.